this year's end-of-year internationals will hold added fascination, and it all starts at the National Stadium in Tokyo as the All Blacks face the Brave Blossoms of Japan. Well, a planned move off the back of the line-out, and Tuivasa Sheck has done superbly. Sevu Reece, his 15th try in Test rugby. Oh, brilliant passing. Here's Riley chopping back. Oh! Nagari scores. Sensational from Japan. Tuivasa Sheck, Caleb Clark busting onto it. Breaking tackles. Caleb Clark, so hard to stop. Van der Heever waiting on the left. They go to the line. It's a try. It's a try. Oh, aim on, big time, Millsy. And the All Blacks do enough, but no more than that.
Yes, they did just enough. It was a fascinating test match in Tokyo. Kia ora, welcome into the breakdown. It is great to have you with us. We will get stuck into the test match shortly, as well as the Black Ferns rolling on at the Rugby World Cup in the quarterfinals. The usual suspects, Mills Molina, Chelsea Semple. With us this week, Taylor Johnson. Great to see you, Taylor. You were out at the big wet today, Waitakere, seeing that quarterfinal England-Australia, almost at the business end now, the semi-finals next week. I hope you had the umbrella today.
Oh, absolutely. Look, the rain was torrential, and I think the English supporters brought it with them, the ones that flew here, because it was bad and we've had such lovely weather, but hey, it played into the hands of England. They're used to playing like that. The quarterfinals, look, they weren't as close as we had expected for a Rugby World Cup, but I'm really looking forward to the semis. Obviously, New Zealand will come up against France. Really looking forward to that. The English, just a big shout out to Sarah Hunter, 138 tests today, the most out of men and women for England, so that's an incredible feat. But look, they dealt to Australia in under really torrential conditions as well. In Canada, no surprises them getting up over USA, but it's been a fantastic World Cup and I can't wait for next week.
France at Eden Park next week. We love a France-New Zealand game at Eden Park. Mills, let's get into this All Blacks test last night and I guess the news of the day. Sam Cane, Dane Coles on the way home, and Brodie Retallick, well, it looks like, guys, that he's set to miss, unless they get out of jail at the judiciary, the rest of this tour. How disruptive?
Bit unsettling, I suppose, for Coach Ian Foster. I suppose if you really look at it, the two injuries are uncontrollable. Yeah, but we've got decent cover there, so he might not be as worried, perhaps, for those sort of guys. But you're going to lose experience. Brodie's, obviously, he's up in the air in terms of how many weeks he's going to end up getting, or whether he gets any weeks. So it's the experience side of things, and the fact they didn't play as well as Ian Foster would have wanted them to play. So it's going to be an edgy week. Chelsea, the fact they have to go to Cardiff, which is a hard place to go and win, and they're under a bit of pressure even though they won, which is a bit uneasy.
Yeah, look, I think what's new for the All Blacks this year, though, right? They've been under pressure all year after each Test match. So we've lost obviously a few key players, one being our captain. But what that does do for our team is it opens up a door of opportunity, a window of opportunity for the likes of Dalton Papali'i and some younger hookers coming in as well, and Asafo Moore getting to experience the All Blacks environment. And I think all of these things that the All Blacks are going through this year, it's just great timing for it to happen, because these are the what ifs, the buts, the maybes that you plan when you're heading into a World Cup year. And to be able to come up against all of this and have to build your resilience as a team, have to build your depth as a team, give those young players a bit more experience, I think, we can look at the real positives that's happening. We've lost a lot of experience, but we do have some other guys coming in. We
have to say, Taylor, from I guess a neutral perspective or the greater good of the game, we all expected Japan to play fast rugby, but Mills and I were having a chat about this today. I don't think we all expected, particularly the All Blacks, the physicality and indeed the defence that Japan brought. It was exceptional.
Oh, Japanese rugby is a different beast these days. We've got to remember they're playing with some of the best players in the world. A lot of them go to France to play their club rugby after they've played in Super or over in Europe. And look, they're a really big side. They've learnt from the past. And definitely that physical battle, you think of Himino, Tatapu, Fafita, they were all outstanding on attack and defence. And I think you're right, the All Blacks didn't expect that from this Japanese team, and I think that is what rattled them.
Tactically, Mills, do you think the All Blacks got it right at the start of the game? They put a lot of high ball up. We did see them change tactics toward the end, one-off runners and a bit of crash and bash. But were you surprised of the lack of maybe variation in the test?
I think the lack of execution as well. I think they were just one step behind. And 5 weeks, you could clearly see they weren't on the hop. They couldn't adjust to different things. That they played into the hands of the Japanese, which were outstanding. Their defence was huge, but you go in with a plan. Obviously, that's what the All Blacks. It just seemed like they were waiting for things to happen. Just stick to that plan. Stick to that plan. Japan will falter. They'll start to fall off tackles, and it never happened. And at some stage, a couple of those guys that been out for 5 weeks didn't have, I suppose, the now saw, because they've been out for so long, to say, hey, we've got to change this. It's not actually working. So I think in some ways the game plan played into the hands of the Japanese, but also how the Japanese have adapted over these last few years, because usually they would start to fall off and then you start to win momentum. We won a little bit of momentum, but then they got it back and scored an excellent try. They're back in the game. You don't see that from Japanese side. So this Japanese side can easily go out. I mean, they've done it. They've been Tier 1 teams, so they're certainly capable of doing that. They put us under a lot of pressure. But our execution, was clearly off. The kicks that we gave to them, too long. We struggled to get out of our own 22. And then, they threw everything at us. And some of those, guys, foreign players that have been there for years and now got their passports, they were exceptional. And it's rubbed off on a lot of the other players as well, Charles.
Yeah, I think that there was a lack of execution. I agree with you there, Mills. But I think a lot of that comes down to these players haven't played together before. There's not the combination or the gelling that's happening. You could see that in a lot of the plays. Even the set piece moves, the strike moves off set piece, just didn't flow as well as they used to. It was just all the timing was a little bit off. And I know I've harped on about it before, but we can't underestimate the power of a good combination. The more minutes you play with someone, especially in Test footy, the more you bond with them, the more you're able to fix things on the go because you understand each other, you understand how each other plays. Combinations give you confidence. So to me, throwing, for Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, for example, throwing him out there with Braden Ennor, who's probably not trained that much with, Perofeta at the back, and Moanga, why not put him out there with the experience of those guys who have played together before, so he can work those combinations rather than putting him out in a one-off game with other players who are also playing in a type of one-off game.
Hindsight's a good thing, and that's probably where I was a little bit worried. I didn't want, if I was coaching, to get to a stage now where, OK, we won, but we're now entering a Northern Hemisphere tour that's massive. I would have loved to have the confidence to go in and say, these guys haven't played for 5 weeks, and this is what I said last week. Get the same combination that, we won, albeit the guys that are out, and you put a Tuivasa-Sheck in there, you add in the, Saviers, the front row stays the same. So, albeit the Barrett brothers that were out in Whitelock, that's still a healthy combination, but we sort of made a few wholesale changes.
So more like build in the players?
Build in, and understand. And like we spoke about it last week, we want to get players out there to test them, and he done. Okay, that's a big tick. We've got to accept that. That's a huge tick to be able to. You've got players out there. I think going forward now, he's now got to play. He's probably forced now to play his best team for these next 3 weeks, Taylor.
Yeah, it's really hard to solidify your spot in a team as well. Look, they've given people chances like Perofeta and like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but as you said, Chelsea, the combinations aren't there, so it's almost like they're going at it alone. And sometimes they were playing a bit like individuals, and that's why it wasn't really flowing as much as we usually see with the All Blacks. But I think you're right, Mills. I think he's forced to pick his strongest side in the team that we're all used to seeing, because with a lot of pressure coming from the public, around, we used to thrash Japan and we lost by 7, so it's going to be interesting, the team that gets picked.
95 Rugby World Cup, the All Blacks did an absolute number on Japan, and we'll take a look at over the years just how the margin has closed between the All Blacks and Japan, no more so than last night in Tokyo. Taylor, you touched on it before, and let's just look at Japanese rugby in the state of it. League One, they're putting so much investment in there. They've got so many expat coaches there, Robbie Deans, Todd Blader, Milton Haig, Steve Hansen as well involved. So many players that have played test footy, Marika Korombete, Samu Kerevi, the list just goes on. When you put all of that together, is it any surprise that Japan were as good as they were last night?
Absolutely not. Iron sharpens iron, right? And look, Paddy Toops, he was playing for the All Blacks last night, and he was literally playing a season in Japan this year. So I don't think there's any surprise at all at how good Japanese rugby has become.
I think with that as well, I watched some of the highlights from previous matches where we did pump Japan, and they're just completely different athletes now. They obviously got a lot of New Zealand rugby players or overseas internationals coming to play in their competition. Their training's ramped up. They're physical beasts out on the field, some of them, and that's a bit big, massive shift that they've made as well, which is why they're able to compete physically with the All Blacks now.
The game's changed over there, and it's changed from, sort of behind the scenes. The companies have gotten really behind the rugby union. They've invested a lot of resource into that, and it's starting to rub off. Even the Sunwolves being part of Super Rugby. Some of the experience that those players have had, and we've already seen it already. The Highlanders that come over and they're sort of going back, but that there and them working together with the companies to get, overseas foreigners to come and sort of, share some of their knowledge, that's starting to rub off. And I think it's evident of where the players have got to now. They understand the physical nature of it. They're standing up. The training's a little bit different. It's not so much, go work for the company and then go after work and train. They're fully professional now, and they've got a real big backing from the companies, which is great to see.
Yeah, we also need to give credit as well to the coaching staff of Jamie Joseph and Tony Brown as well. Like, yes, you can have the cattle, but what you're doing with them is really important as well. And I think that was really big on the Test match.
Absolutely it was. And Tony Brownie, caught up with Goldie after the Test in Tokyo.
Brownie, you said you had a plan. That's what you told me yesterday, and you almost pulled it off. I mean, talk through that performance from your side, and how proud are you?
Yeah, obviously, firstly, just very proud of the effort. To sort of have the game slipping away there in the second half and have the courage to hang in tough and get a charge down try, which gave us a bit more belief, and then sort of have the All Blacks under the pump at the end. And as a coaching team, that's all we could ask for, is give ourselves the opportunity to win. It wasn't to be tonight, but the amount of belief that our guys will get from the performance will be huge for us going forward.
It's funny you say that, because I asked Jamie before the game, did you believe? And he was a little bit cagey on the answer, but afterwards, clearly, he thinks this group has. How far have they come, even in the last 18 months, given the fact you're back in international rugby?
Yeah, well, that's right. I think, when you're playing the All Blacks, they've got the ability to put 60 on you quickly. And, if you're coaching against them, you never ever want to poke the bear.
Yeah.
So, and you're always worried that they're going to have one of those days where they can embarrass you. But, for our guys around creating the belief and, rebuilding to having a real crack at the next World Cup's really important for us. And this was a big stepping stone for us around being able to handle a pretty good All Blacks team and be able to handle the individual X-Factor players that, traditionally have dominated Japan.
Have you changed your defensive systems, the way that you're shutting down opposition, or is that just something that you've just adapted slightly as you've come up against better sides?
Yeah, it's not so much changing the system, it's getting the players more comfortable to go and win collisions, keep going forward, and when we defend best, we actually tackle in twos because we're not quite big enough to dominate one-on-one. So the double hits where we were good tonight, stopped the All Blacks.
Is this a springboard to the end of your tour with what you got in front of you, and a springboard maybe for the next 12 months? The fact that well and truly going into France next year, you're going to be more than competitive.
Yeah, well, these 3 games, All Blacks, England and France, were huge for us. And, Eddie Jones always got a few words for Japan when we go over there. He
loves the chat, right?
He likes to roll the Japanese up. So, he did last time, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same this time. So we're definitely going to be preparing pretty well for that game.
Well done tonight. Awesome effort.
Cheers, mate.
Millsy, it was an astute coaching performance as well as that on the field from the players. You've got to think now for Japan, having gone so close to upsetting the All Blacks, the mighty All Blacks. Jamie Joseph talked about it. The aura has perhaps been smashed now, but not only that, he talked about England being a better team that they've got to play next week. I mean, the confidence levels of having played so well and gone so close must do wonders for this team.
Oh, it's massive. And you've got to think also, they had a really good lead-up. They had the Australian A side. Albeit they lost, 2. But what was important is they won that last one. They lead into now to the, so they had a solid sort of, lead up into the All Blacks. They now go to England, which is a tough place to go and play, Twickenham. It's another stepping stone in terms of their plan. And I like what he's sort of talking about. He's talked about how they had double tackled and because they're not quite physical to have sort of win that contact one-on-one. They're going to have that same challenge when they go to England, if not even harder, because those guys there are probably a lot more physical than probably what the All Blacks are in terms of the size and that, Taylor. So he knows what the challenge is. But they also, what I love about what Brownie's saying is the plan that they've got in place leading into Rugby World Cup.
And I think it's the belief that those two coaches instill in their players as well, because they're talking so confidently, and that would rub off on the players. And you talk about the aura, but that belief, and I think, as you said, yes, they can't really compete physically and they commit 2 tacklers, but that's why they have to be really smart on attack, and that's why I love that they bring heaps of variation to their game, because if you're not going to win defensively, then you really need to be good on attack. And you can see Tony Brown all over the line-out moves, the set-piece moves as well. They were always trying something different, and they were changing pictures for their All Black team, and it made it hard to defend. They're not playing the simple rugby that they used to play. They're always doing something different, and it was really hard for the team to read defensively. And as Chelsea mentioned before, because the connections aren't there, you can't really trust your inside man that you always know is going to be there, because you haven't really played with them too much. So I think what those two coaches have done with this team is great.
Chelsea, we talked about the fact that obviously they're without the captain now, Sam Cane. It gives a chance for Dalton to come and step. I mean, he was brilliant, wasn't he, when he came off the pine? I think 9 tackles in 14-odd minutes. So you look at him. Who else would have locked their places down? Maybe Shannon Frizzell. You've got to talk about another locking option now with Scott Barrett. He obviously would potentially slot him with Sam Whitelock. How do you see that unfolding for Cardiff?
It's a tough one. In terms of any one person solidifying their role, I'm not sure last night was a good indicator of being able to say any one person really stood out. Dalton, that stat alone, 9 tackles in 14 minutes, showed how hungry he was to stamp a mark. And obviously with Sam Cane out, he has the perfect opportunity to go in and be part of that loose forward trio. Whether we play him there or Adi goes back into 7, I'm not sure. Someone else who I think has more than solidified their role is obviously Tokiaho. He is hands down our best hooker and one of our best performing forwards week in, week out. So again, last night he had the late call in and managed to put together a pretty fantastic performance. In terms of the locking department, we've obviously got Barrett coming back in, Sam Whitelock, who'll come in and maybe captain. I'm guessing he'll be our captain. But yeah, we've got a few young guys there as well. So look, I think... Back to your question, I'm not sure anything's solidified there, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what we go with for the Wales test.
If you're Ian Foster, what are you trying to gain out of this game and the selections you've made? Okay, you're giving guys an opportunity to go out there and play a couple, play their first test matches or start their first test for some of them as well, giving them some more extra game time because they haven't seen a little bit, like the Lalas that have been there for a while, Bauer getting him back into the swing of things. Yeah. If there was anyone that was sort of really going to stand out, when you look at the team that played against Australia, they have to be in positions where your top players aren't going to. And I suppose he's ticked the boxes in terms of that. He's given them game time. You got Bauer, Lala, Tupou Vai. He's still sort of got it. He hasn't played a lot of football, and in terms of Test match football. Frizzell comes into the mix. Christie, he brings a different game. In terms of what Aaron Smith would bring. Okay, so let's put him out there and see, how he goes. Not just under pressure, but also game variation. And then you look at the back with Sheck and they haven't played a lot of Test match. Well, they've hardly played any at all. And Perofeta. So he's ticked all those boxes. The good thing about what's happened is we've won. They've been put under a bit of pressure. Okay, don't get me wrong, they've been put under a heap of pressure. The thing now is it's so important. They have been resilient throughout this whole year in terms of the stuff that's happened off the field. It's important now they go to Wales, which is going to be a very tough ask, and get everyone up to scratch and really try and fight for that sort of momentum back. Ideally, you wouldn't have wanted that situation because you would have wanted just to kick on for this tour and then keep going. Hopefully, by the Scottish test, being able to give those guys opportunities. But I think the big positive is you've ticked all those boxes and giving those guys game time. We now kick on, we reset, and we really try and hammer these next 3 weeks because it's going to be tough. That Northern Hemisphere teams, they will be vying for blood.
Millsy, you were talking a couple of weeks back about maybe the Scottish test being the chance to play a few new guys and blood some players. Taylor, I want to talk about the midfield. Chelsea's alluded to it as well. Did we get enough out of that exercise last night with Braden Ennor and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck? Because you've got to ask the question, how involved are those two going to be in that All Black midfield conversation going forward?
Well, you already know how involved they're going to be because they're off the All Black 15, and we had 2 people sitting on the bench, 2 midfielders essentially, with Anton Linnett-Brown and David Havili coming back in. And I was really impressed with Anton Linnett-Brown when he came onto the field. Look, Tuivasa-Sheck, he had some really good touches as well, and there was a lack of chemistry in between those 2 players, and I don't think someone like Braden really cemented his spot there. But the midfield has been a massive problem for the All Blacks. We've got so many skilled individuals, but whether the combination, I don't know who the great combination is there, but it's a real tough headache.
Chelsea, take it away.
I think for me, as a player, where you get the most confidence and the most gains as a player is when you play 1 week, you go back, you do your review with the coaches, with whoever you're playing with to make those combinations, and you get to go back out there in the next week or two and fix those mistakes and gel a bit more. So that's the tough thing for me. These guys have been chucked out there, and yeah, there's a lot to fix. We all know that. But are they going to get the opportunity to do that? Or is putting, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck down to the 15 going to give him the opportunity to do that in a different environment? But then again, we're losing that combination. So, yeah, look, I do agree with you, Mills, with the fact that having the first game to give all these guys a go and really tick the boxes, I'm not sure it was the right move to be able to then fix some of those things, give these players more confidence. See, now what we're going to do is we're going to go put our best team back out there, and these guys are going to sit back and, all they've got memories of is the Japan game, where they probably didn't have the ability to shine like they would have liked to in their one opportunity in the All Blacks.
There's going to be a cauldron, that is for sure, against Wales in Cardiff. Congratulations too to Billy Harmon, who's been called up wonderful season in Super Rugby, fully deserved as well. Well, a first test start for Stephen Perofeta in Tokyo. He caught up with Goldie after the match.
Well, Stephen, congratulations. Obviously, it was a big shift out there tonight. A lot of, I suppose, anticipation going into the test match. How did you find the whole experience?
It was test match footy. I think first taste was just the speed of it, and you got to react at a different speed. So it was definitely an eye-opener for me, and I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed it. It was definitely a test, and it wasn't the prettiest win, but we got the win.
Can you talk me through the rolling emotions during a game? I remember myself from time to time as the ebbs and flows, the momentum shifts. Did you feel some of that during this match?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll do one good thing and then probably couldn't quite stack it and back it up, which we'll probably look at this week and look to improve that in the coming weeks. But yeah, look, we knew Japan would come back and they wouldn't go down without a fight. So yeah, it was a tough contest.
In terms of the experience through the course of the week and the responsibility of knowing you're starting in the test match, how do you felt you went dealing with that?
I thought I did all right. Yeah, I was able to get clear and just focus on how I could contribute to the team. Tonight, probably just a little bit slow off the mark, but look, first started test was definitely an eye-opener, but I enjoyed the most of it. Yeah.
A bit of a sense of a relief though, the fact that you've got that one behind you. Like everyone talked about the 45 seconds, and we're going to ourselves, when is he going to get that next chance? Is there almost a weight off the shoulders, the fact now I know that this is what it feels like?
Yeah, definitely. But then it's about, I think for me, how I can grow and improve on this performance, playing 80 at test match level, because it's a step above all else. So I'm definitely excited about the opportunity in the coming weeks, whether or not I get the chance to play again.
It's been a great place to play. I was wondering what it would be like here for 65,000 people. This has been a special night.
Very special. I think, to be honest, for 65,000, it wasn't as loud as I thought it would be. But that's Japanese for you. They have a lot of respect, and even when the kickers were kicking, it was like you could hear a pin drop with the way they were so silent. So look, they love the game as much as we do, and they're passionate supporters. And yeah, we're very blessed to play in front of a Japanese crowd.
First win in the belt. Well done. Congratulations.
Cheers, Goldie. Thank you.
So, Sir John Kerwin, let's reflect on tonight, but also a bit of focus to next week. The fact there's a lot of guys out here are doing some conditioning work. We've got a few Barretts who've come back in. 3 of them have come back into the fold, will be available for next week. So it's Wales and Cardiff. It'll be a vastly different team, and they'll need to be more accurate than they were here tonight in Japan.
Yeah, look, I think if you talk about the game, what was interesting, probably Stephen Perofeta playing at fullback, probably didn't break enough so you could put him at 10. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at 12. Hoskins Tutu at 8. They were probably the big selections for me. So as you move into next week, you're saying, okay, did they do enough to actually start forcing a test spot? And my immediate answer is probably not yet. And you're probably looking at going back to some of the guys who are behind us. Who comes in at 12? Do we go back to probably the 2 guys that are running in behind us?
It's going to be a different game though, right? When
yeah, Wales is hard.
Yeah, but it's completely different conditions. I mean, this is an afternoon game. That was frenetic out there in terms of the speed and the pace, and it looked as though we sort of hit a bit of a wall. Whereas we're going to go into Cardiff, and and they themselves are searching for a bit. So, I mean, if we come back to what we had at the end of the Rugby Championship, you get a feeling as though we'll be able to kick things off again, right?
Yeah, there's absolutely no excuses for today, and don't take anything away from Japan.
No.
So what we need to look at, and I don't know whether they're hiding some stuff, but they did a beautiful move where we scored in the first half, where there's a bit of movement, but we did a lot in the channel where Japanese are good. They get two shoulders on, they're running into that space. So if you are Wayne Pivac and you're sitting back there in Wales, you're going, they're going to play like that. We're just going to not worry about winning the ball. We're just going to get off our line. The Japanese today did not contest the ruck a lot because they just thought, we're going to spread and bash them over. So I'd be seeing, I think they'll get on the plane, they'll be happy with the win, not that happy with some of the performances. Some of the individuals have done enough to put themselves in contention, but I still think we'll go back to Whitelock will be out there. Who knows what's going to happen with the red card? You know, Rico will now go to 13.
Will Jordan, I'm not sure where Will Jordan is right now, whether or not he rejoins and comes back in. And you know, he was the obvious fullback option and alternative for this game, which we never got to see. So let's talk about expectations then. And maybe you've been in a situation where you haven't played for a month. The All Blacks were in that situation, right? They've come together. This was a new combination which hadn't played together before, and they hadn't played for 4 weeks. So I'm almost prepared to forgive them this disjointed performance. But in the end, they've won another Test match.
Win the football game and get on with it. I mean, you and I have both been in this situations. You come to Japan, you're going on your northern tour. There'll be 3 or 4 different Test matches, and if we're going to win them all, you're going to win them in different ways. And today probably wasn't as comfortable as the All Black coaches would have won, but 1 down. Get on with it. Guys have stood up. I thought Roger showed some good signs, which I think was good. Had good feet, good offloads, you know. But next week, I don't think there'll be too many changes to the starting lineup. The big question is, where's Geordie going to play? So is Will Jordan going to come back into the side? Is he well? What do we do? So I think probably we'll see Havili, we'll see Rico, we'll see Geordie back at fullback. What are we going to do at 10?
The last thing for me will be, where does Anton Leonard-Brown fit the picture as well? Because he was really good tonight, coming off the bench, showed his experience, his discipline and accuracy defensively. I tell you what, team, I think the next couple of days, the selection debate is one we love to have on the breakdown. I want to hear from you guys who you think is going to play in Cardiff.
No real disagreement from the pair of them, which is unusual. Mills, let's talk though about tight five. Firstly, I mean that is one area of the loosies in midfield, Chelsea as well. But that tight five mix, you were saying maybe they need to run that out against Japan, get some momentum. We will see big change there, obviously, if Brodie gets the skate at the judiciary as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've had real momentum with the young guys that we've had in the tight five. You know, De Groot will come in, Tokiaho, we know that he's played really well, and Lomax comes into the play. The locking will be interesting because Barrett, if Retallick is going to be out, he's probably going to slot in. Then you put Frizzell in. You see Artie comes back into play, and you put Papali'i. That would be the obvious fix, and give Frizzell that sort of a bit more game time. And the guys are right. I think they will revert back to the team that perhaps sort of Melbourne / the Auckland sort of Test match. And the talking point will be second five and also where Bowden plays. I think Havili probably, I'll probably go backwards. I'd put Bodie on the bench with ALB because I don't think you don't need to put ALB under that much pressure to go out there and start a Test match. He's coming back. He played really well yesterday. But it's the makeup of where Bowden and him play. So they cover a lot of positions. If you put Bowden out there at 15. And move Geordie around, then you're sort of opening yourself up to someone getting injured and then not being able to cover that from the bench. And so I think you go back to that, you revert back to that, which would be a lot of big talking point because I still think Mo'unga needs to stay at 10 to keep that consistency. So 12 for me is going to be a big talking point, but for me, really, the bench makeup would be Christie, ALB and Bowden Barrett and let Havili have another shot at second five and put Geordie at the back.
Chelsea, there's also the call for the All Blacks to have more of a power game at second 5/8, and maybe that's where you could look at a Geordie. What would your mix be for Cardiff? Do you throw ALB back in there? Yeah,
it's interesting, and I obviously he is coming back from injury and. Previous years, he's played more at 13 in the All Blacks, but I've always preferred him at 12. And I think one of the positions in the backline at the moment that is quite solidified is Rieko Ioane at centre. So it's going to be about who he works best with. The interesting thing for me is Geordie has come out quite publicly and said that he wants to be a 12. Yep. So after him coming out and saying that, do we put him back at fullback or do we give him an opportunity at 12? And I think if we look a few months ago, when we had a few injuries and stuff, we didn't really have many options there. Now all of a sudden we've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck going back down to the 15 because we've got Anton, because we've got Geordie now putting his hand up, and we've got Havili, who's probably played the most minutes there this year. For me, my choice would be Anton. I think get him in, get him game time. He's going to be a great option to have as a midfield combination with Rico. He's got the experience, he's got the X factor.
He has played on the big stage, and the big stage, Taylor, is where the Black Ferns will be in the semi-finals. Cannot wait against France. It will be a full house. Let's just hope they don't have the wet weather that we had today around the city of sails, literally. But what have you seen? There's been a lot of chat about the Northern Tour last year and how the Black Ferns went on that. Chelsea will talk to that as well.
There's been a lot of chat about the Northern Tour last year.
I think Chelsea's sick of chatting about it, but we'll go ahead.
What have you seen from the Black Ferns? And you know the game so well.
Yep.
What do you see with this side going into that semi-final against France that we could have a wee bit of an edge?
Well, look, the head coach, he said, we're not going to win games if we play like everyone else. So already they've got that mentality that they need to do something different. And what I've observed in the pool matches and in the quarterfinal is that they will not kick from their own 22. They want to keep ball in hand. And why wouldn't you when you've got such phenomenal strike power from 1 to 15, but particularly in that back line? You look at the midfield, Teresa Fitzpatrick has been outstanding. But then the back three, you've got the Letty Ingers, the Portia Wismans, the Ruby Tuis. But on that, Ruby Tui has not been tested at fullback. Yes, she's played 2 games there, but Wales never kicked it to her, which is surprising. But the French team, they're onto it. They're going to know that, look, she's not a fullback, and perhaps that's when they bring Renee Holmes in. Like, not doubting Ruby Tui's skill set because it's phenomenal, but we don't know what she's like kicking under pressure inside that 22. But as I said, they want to play with excitement, and they've got license to as well. They finished pool play with the most offloads and the most clean breaks out of any other team because they want to keep the ball alive and they're not going to play boring rugby. And that's the key difference, I think, from the end of year tour last year and to now, is that they're not afraid to just have a go and to make mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think all you need to do is look at the footage from the end of year tour to just see the difference in body shapes in the Black Ferns this year.
Yeah.
And that's purely because we're full-time professional this year. What a difference that makes. You know, we're not going to work anymore and then playing international footy. So that in itself, you know, we're much more physically conditioned. I think heading into this week, the most interesting thing for me is going to be, like you said, Taylor, who starts at fullback and who's on the bench. Because this week, I found it so interesting. We had both Hazel Tubic and Renee Holmes on the bench, both cover 15. And when Renee Holmes came on the field, she actually went into first 5. I don't know if all of us noticed that, but she was playing at first 5. Hazel Tubic was at fullback. So I'm wondering if that's Wayne Smith looking ahead and thinking that he wants to play Hazel more as a fullback cover rather than a 10 cover. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Renee Holmes is still the best goal kicker in the team, so she adds that. And we know all of our pool games and our quarterfinal have not been close enough for goal kicking to come into consideration. But it's definitely going against France and England. So it's another massive talking point.
Millsy, you know very well the coaching credentials of Wayne Smith. We know it's a hard game to win if you don't win the game up front. But what do you see from the way he's been coaching this team that maybe there is a strategy to counteract France and what they might bring physically?
He hasn't hidden away from the fact they want to play a different game, right? So it's open play. And I think, to your point, he would have looked at that, you know, Hazel being back there, because if I was France, this is a different team that you're going to go up against. You know, what do? You're looking at a team that want to play a hard, on top of the ground, fast game from anywhere, run it out from anywhere. So what do? You want to kick. You want to kick, isolate your back three, force them into mistakes, or force them to kick it out and try and slow the game down. And so that's where he possibly is thinking, OK, if we get ourselves into trouble in those early sort of minutes, perhaps I can bring on the bench and make an impact in that way. There's no doubt about it, OK? I mean, they're going to have to front up, you know, up front. That's going to be I mean, and they have against the Welsh. Have they been tested yet? I don't think so, you know, and that's probably the difficult part. And Smithy will draw all on that sort of emotion that they would have had. They would have set up, you know, how they're going to, you know, not the bits they're going to play on the field, but the bits that sort of relate to where they're from, what the jersey is all about. We're massive on that in terms of New Zealand sort of, you know, rugby and that. So he'll draw on that for these next couple of weeks to really fire the girls up, because it's going to come down to that little bit of emotion, and they're going to need it up front, because that physical battle has to be won.
Look, and France, they have the benefit of having England in their pool, so they have been tested in this World Cup, and even their quarterfinal was really close up until the 60th minute mark when they decided to run away with it. So I think it's going to be really difficult for the Black Ferns, who, as you said, haven't really been put under any kind of pressure, especially in the back, you know, in that back three. So it's going to be really interesting to see who they do go with, Charles.
Yeah, and I think weather, I hate to say it, but weather's going to play a massive part in how these games are played. If you look at all of the highlights, and I'll jump to England here, I know we're playing France, but look at all the highlights from their try scored. Rolling mauls, pick and goes, they're all up front. Yeah. Look at all our highlights, it's Portia Woodman. It's all out wide, we're playing with our skill set, so I'm hoping it's going to be a dry track. That's where we'll play our best rugby. England and France both have a great kicking game, which we haven't come up against yet, so we've talked about that. But up front is going to be where it's won for sure, and I hope, you know, I know that Wayne Smith will be putting way more focus on adding an edge to our tight five this week and putting them under pressure.
Taylor, you've played international rugby up front for Manusino. What do you see with this Black Ferns unit, even though they haven't been tested, that maybe they have made some progress that might give you a bit of confidence against a French pack?
I think just the connections of playing together, because look, we haven't played a lot of footy, you know, over the past few years with COVID, and they've had so many camps this year. So the tight five, also them playing more Farah Palmer Cup as well, because remember that a couple of years ago, the Black Ferns weren't even playing in the Farah Palmer Cup finals, which was ridiculous. And now they've actually been playing consistent rugby together. I think if we're looking at a front row that can really compete against France, I think it needs to be that Canterbury one, because they have sent the benchmark and they played last night and they just pushed Wales off the ball. So look, I think even our locks as well, Chelsea and I were talking before, you know, Chelsea, Bremner, Mayaka Wanikalani, Roos and Jonah Nanbu, it's a headache to pick who starts, because they've all been really good and we have really struggled in that locking position, and they're all dynamic, they're good defenders and good attackers. So I think just the whole round skill set of the front row has changed in comparison to other years. Chelsea,
the midfield conundrum has been a good one for Wayne Smith, because I think, you know, there was so much focus on the back three and Portia and Ruby and Aisha, but Teresa and Stacey are playing some wonderful footy together.
Again, I sound like a broken record, but it's a combination, isn't it? They've played so much footy together. They've been on the World Series, they've played Olympics, Commonwealth Games together. They've lived together, those two. They're great mates. So, and you can see that they trust each other on the field. I think you said it earlier, Teresa Fitzpatrick's been outstanding. Her offload game, her defence, her ability to read defence and put shots on has been outstanding. So I think he's solidified his midfield. I do feel for the likes of Amy Duplessis, who has been outstanding all year, and her missing out on a starting spot in that 13 jersey has nothing to do with her effort, her performances, her heart. She just simply doesn't have the experience that those two have. So unfortunately, there's just no room for her. But I did want to give a shout out to, she's been outstanding this year and she deserves to be in that World Cup team as well. And even just on Teresa's performance as well, she really surprised me last night, because she was almost playing like a playmaker, like Ruahei's position. The amount of space she was putting others in, her vision, it was outstanding. You know, it's not something we'd often see from someone like her, but she was outstanding last night. She put people into space, which usually we see demand, and I think, you know, some people accidentally calling her demanding commentary because she was playing like that. It was fantastic.
Okay, let's get our picks for the semi-finals. Chelsea, it's got to be Black Ferns. It's got to be Black Ferns, but by how much?
I want it to be a tight game. I think we need to be tested in a really tight game, even come from behind if we're going to come up against England in the final. So we'll get the job done. We definitely will. Backing the girls. 8 points.
How would 8-7 sound at Eden Park Mills?
Yeah. I don't want a tight game. There's no way I'm wanting a tight game. So, like, I do. I mean, and it's how fantastic has it been? I mean, that crowd in Whangarei, and so
good.
The girls are going to need it, you know, to get in behind them. So I hope it's not close, but it is going to be. And we've always said it. You know, once we get to the French and the English sides, it's going to be a massive challenge. So up the girls.
If you had asked me this a couple of months ago, I would have said France, but just seeing how much the team has been improving, I have to say, look, the Black Ferns, but I agree with everyone, it's going to be really close. And just seeing the faces of the women light up every time they take the field in front of a home crowd, I think they're going to do it.
I think a full house at Eden Park, I think, will just be the extra little bit that the Black Ferns need to get it done. Right, trivia this week. Get your thinking caps on. Who was the last All Black? To play a test out of the second division of New Zealand rugby. Back after the break, this is East Coast celebrations from the Lahore Cup. They beat Mid-Canterbury. It was a wonderful occasion. See you soon here on The Breakdown.
The player.
Wikurangi te maunga ko waiapu te awa ko Ngāti Pro te iwi. Welcome to rugby, East Coast style.
It means everything to Ngāti Pro, this whole community. There's a lot of Ngāti Pro that don't live here, but they're here today. Ngāti Pro East Coast families, rugby brings them all together and brings the best out of all of us. We love playing against each other, but we're better when we're all playing on the same side.
Coming back home to our whānau, to our maunga, to the awa, giving life back to the people and being, grateful and thankful. I remember coming here in 99 and 2000, and I was the same, one of those little kids looking up to our team back then. So for me, just trying to, how can we create the same for our next generation,
We all come from our little corners, but we all come together when it's about the collective. Very good at coming together when the game gets tough, when it's too battle, You're not my enemy today. But next week when you're wearing black and white and I'm wearing yellow and black, kia ora tātou.
East Coast still going. Fantastic work from there. Driving forwards and they're still going. They might crash over here. They do.
As you can see, the coasters are dominating at the moment. We just did our true blue, hearty East Coast rolling more for the first try. East Coast all the way, without a doubt.
Championships, they come and go. Finals, they come and go. Things like this, what our team's doing today for our people, they think it's going to last forever, like they've done in 2001, like they did in 2012. So above anything else, above rugby, it's for our people, for our iwi.
Strong in the defence, Timmy Tautoa, breaking away, got the pass on, there it is for East Coast, down the sideline, there's the try. East Coast will get rid of it, and East Coast, Lahore Cup champions in 2022.
We just got over the line because of the crowd and the people and the whole atmosphere up the coast. Why would Wellington want to plant this whole place in trees? This is the heartbeat of New Zealand. Just look at it. It's a celebration when we are in a final, and New Zealand's alive and well, and the coast is a pumping place to be. So cheers, whānau.
There you have it, whānau. Your 2020 Bunnings Heartlands Championship Lahore Cup winners, Ngāti Pro East Coast.
No mai hoka mai, welcome back to The Breakdown. It's good to have you with us tonight. The trivia question before we went to the break was which player had played for the All Blacks a test out of the second division? Who was the last player to do that in 1997? We were scratching our heads. Mills, when you had the 1997 clue, you were like, yes, I got it. So who was it?
I'm going to say Christian Cullen or Bull Allen.
What do you guys reckon?
Well, I was born in 1996, so I was 1 year old when that. So I got
was it the
no
Vikings?
idea.
Was the team the Vikings?
It was Christian Cullen. It was the Central Vikings. I thought Glenn Taylor and Northam, but there you go. Christian Cullen, 58 Test matches. How about the jersey?
How good.
Quality. Christian Cullen it was a great trivia question. Rightio, guys, let's talk about the first 15 game, and you would have seen the news during the week that the 1A teams in Auckland, Taylor, have been involved with Land Rover First 15 Rugby for a very long time. They don't want these games televised, and they're putting it down to a few different things, and one of those is I guess, player welfare, mental health of the young men. And Chelsea, you'll have a take on this, being a teacher as well, but what do you think, Taylor? Do you think it's a good call, what they've done?
Oh, I think if it's for mental health, then yes, absolutely. But you got to remember, we only do 5, maybe if that, games of Auckland 1A a year. And look, the thing about the statement is the first thing it says is we're returning to our values for the 2023 season. And if I think of values, televising the game, that's not going to fix any of the values that are kind of misaligned in First 15 1A rugby. The biggest thing is the poaching issue. And if you're going to be serious about values, then you got to go back to, okay, we're going to sign this thing that we're not going to take from different catchment areas and leave different schools high and dry, because that is one of the biggest issues in 1A rugby. It's the poaching. That's why people are getting upset. So look, if it's not televised, that's okay. There's plenty of other rugby to watch, especially on Pasadena around the country. But we got to look at it. If it's really about values, then there's so many other things that also need to be fixed.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I mean, I taught as recently as last year at Hamilton Boys High, and I taught there for a few years, St Peter's, St Paul's as well. So I guess as a teacher of these boys, I see the effects that having televised games can have on them, and for the most part, it is positive. But there is an element there that does put these boys under pressure at a young age. It becomes a massive school-wide event. If you've got a boy in your English class, but he's got to play on TV later that day or the next day, he's not doing any schoolwork. So I guess that's just giving an alternate view on things. Being a school teacher, I'm behind the decision to take it off TV and just make playing rugby at school what it's meant to be about, which is making friends, improving your game, having fun, playing for your school.
What do you reckon, Mills? Like, is there a disconnect? Because, you know, some of the players, they get on the TV and then they get excited about that next step into the academies and whatnot. Some go and play the club game and then we see the numbers in club falling away. I mean, what do you see the issue being here?
Well, I definitely agree with what these two have said. I think there's many issues that's got to be fixed. You know, obviously the poaching and signing people up to, you know, are these kids that are getting scholarships, are they doing their work? What's the curriculum? What do they need to achieve? That's probably all in-house sort of stuff. I think when they come out with a statement, and let's remember, OK, there's 69 games. This is only the 1A.
Exactly.
69 games in a year. And televised, we've only televised, what, 4 games, maybe 5? And that's right up to the final. That's 5 games out of 69 that's been televised. And so I get it, OK? Is there pressure on players? You know, you've had Miles Hoggerty from, you know, De La Salle come out and say, as many as, you know, players that are 14 and 15-year-old players that are sort of, you know, I suppose, exposed to this. We're talking 1A here, right? I don't think I've ever seen a 14 or 15-year-old since Jonah Lommel days. You're talking about a year 9 or year 10. I mean, if you're old enough like me, that's a 3rd and 4th former. I don't think they've been exposed. And if they are, that's the responsibility, isn't it, of the high school to say, well, why are you actually playing these players? And so I get that. When you come out with stuff like that, and then you've got, you know, Pat Drum, he's come out and said, you know, the 2 things that have come out is the commercialisation and the exposure of this, OK? So then there's no filming, you know, no live streaming. OK, that's all fine. But then they go and live stream their own sort of content. There's exposure on there with sponsorships. And there's all their own sort of crew in terms of, you know, the commentators and things like that. And we've got to remember, I come right back, it's 5 games of the 1A. But they're doing it themselves. There's affluent schools that are streaming games every week that you have to sort of log into and pay. And so they're doing that every week. So what does this all sort of come down to? You know, when you're talking 69 games, but 5, including a final, and you were exposing commercial, 2 things. And it's ironic, really, for me, when you look at it, that, you know, NZA, you're doing a review on you know, high school, you know, rugby. So is this really, you know, a chance now for the 1A, who's no one else in the country is talking about it, just the 1A, to sort of make sure they're sitting themselves right plump, you know, around that sort of round table when this does end up going somewhere, if it does, because it's massive. The 1A competition in Auckland is huge, but there's no real substance behind why they're doing it other than the mental health and exposure of these players. And when it comes down to it, it's 5 games max out of 69, and when they're doing their own live streaming, who's actually exposing them? I mean, and then these other issues. You've talked about an issue. You've talked about an issue. They're coming out and saying they're constantly exposed to, you know, agents and scouts turning up. You can't control that, you know. And filming live. I mean, I went to my niece's, you know, tournament the other day. It was a fantastic girls' tournament in Ponsonby, and like, you know, there would have been about at least 3 or 4, you know, in each game, people live streaming, you know, these games of their own kids playing. I mean, that's the world we live in these days. And so I agree, OK, there is an element where you've got to make sure it's safe. And that's about getting around the round table, or the table at least, and saying, hey, these are our challenges. This is what we've collected from the coaches, the players, you know, the people that want to go out there, first 15 sort of team, and this is what they were saying. They're really concerned. They don't want to be on there, and that's fine. They've just come out and just said, well, nothing. And why only 1A rugby?
Yeah.
I mean, the streaming in terms of other sports is probably more. There's more exposure in that in terms of the live streaming of other sports than what there is in 1A. So, again, it comes back to my point about that commercialisation and perhaps setting themselves up at a nice place around that round table if it does end up happening.
And the most interesting thing as well is Mills and I, both of us, have spoken to Auckland 1A coaches who said they were blindsided by the decision and none of the principals had spoken to them. So that's 3 different coaches that had said they had zero consultation. And so it is a bit of misalignment, and it is quite interesting that it's come from the top down and they spoke about, oh, it's for the players, but a lot of those schools didn't actually consult the players themselves. So look, there's heaps of arguments for and against, but it is interesting. It's an interesting space. But as we said, it's just the Auckland 1A. There's plenty of other rugby played throughout the year, and especially like the Super Raider and the Christchurch Championship. That's great.
Absolutely, we love bringing it to you on Sky 15 Rugby. Just quickly, we know the answer for picks for Black Ferns, France. Mills, Cardiff, quickly.
Oh, we'll win. The All Blacks will win by...
I love you to say we'll win. You don't even say a score.
14.
14. Chelsea.
Well, I'm happy I can watch both games at the right time this week. That's one big positive. But look, I think, we've got a massive point to prove again this week. So, yeah, All Blacks.
But isn't the All Black 15 clashing with the All Blacks as well? So there's another scheduling nightmare. But
it's not a World Cup, though.
It's not a World Cup, nowhere near as bad as that. But I am going to say I'll go with All Blacks. I think the strongest team's going to start.
Mills, Chelsea, Taylor, that is us for another week. We'll see you next week here on The Breakdown. Have a safe week. Catch you soon.
Challenge Cup. Tokyo busts away and he passes it up. Brody Retallick will score the opening try. A lovely little handoff to Ivasa Shek. Pops it up. Oh, this is lovely from the All Blacks. And Braden Enor is in. Lovely ball away to Sevu Reece. And he'll sprint away for the try. And the All Blacks do enough, but